As you travel along Dundas Street in Etobicoke, which is now part of Toronto, with all the stoplights, shops, and steady flow of people and traffic, it makes it easy to overlook what's just off the road, a small fenced burial ground. Inside that fenced area are 86 weathered headstones, quietly marking the lives of those who once built and shaped the community of Islington. Welcome to Dead Canadians Carved in Stone, where we look at the history and the mystery of lives carved in stone. Today we're at the Islington Burial Ground in Etobicoke, Ontario. This is one of the oldest burial grounds in the area. It was founded in 1830s as a non-denominational cemetery here in the community of Islington. As you can see, it has been engulfed completely by the city of Toronto that has just grown around it, and there is new construction happening immediately adjacent. Busy Dundas Street is just to the south of us, and south? It's a weird part of the city where it's called 6 Points, so I'm not sure which way is north, actually. Before the settlers established farms and carved roads, this land was part of the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. In 1805, the British Crown negotiated the Toronto Purchase, which is Treaty 13, with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Through this agreement, the Crown asserted ownership of a large area of land, including what's now Etobicoke. Every modern road, survey line, and property boundary in this part of Toronto rests on this treaty land. Picture the landscape: open woodland, small creeks threading through marshy lowlands, and a long sandy ridge, a remnant of the ancient Lake Iroquois shoreline. Lake Iroquois was a prehistoric glacial lake, roughly where Lake Ontario is today, but larger. As Lake Iroquois receded around 12,000 years ago, it left behind sandy ridges and pockets of clay that shaped the contours of the land. That ridge provides slightly higher, drier ground than the wetter land to the south. The ridgeline not only guided travel and settlement, but it also influenced where the first graves were placed. Higher, well-drained areas were preferred for cemeteries. The military and early settlers gradually followed this natural high ground, which eventually became the route we now know as Dundas Street. Dundas Street was formally established in the 1790s by John Graves Simcoe, the first Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, and it was designed as a military road to transport troops and supplies away from the vulnerable American border. In the aftermath of the American Revolution, Simcoe was deeply concerned about the possibility of a future U.S. invasion. In response, he ordered the construction of a military route stretching from Lake Ontario to the Upper Thames River, which is now London, Ontario. The village of Islington developed at a natural crossroads, where Dundas Street, laid out as the Governor's Road, met Islington Avenue, a north-south route that connected early farms, mills, and homesteads. This intersection became the heart of the village. It was here that the community also set aside land for a burying ground. Over time, Islington grew into a hub for both travelers and local farmers, supported in part by Dundas Street and the proximity to Mimico Creek, which flows southward to Lake Ontario. The Islington Burial Ground, also historically known as the Mimico Burying Ground, is often given an established date of 1844 or earlier. The actual date is unclear. However, as with many early cemeteries, the story is more complex. Intriguingly, some headstones in the cemetery bear earlier death dates, most notably Jane Morrow, who died in 1807. This raises a compelling historical puzzle. While her marker may suggest an early 19th century interment, it's more likely that her remains were relocated here from an earlier, possibly private farm burial site. That was a common practice at the time. These early burials reflected time before the establishment of public cemeteries, when settlers often buried their dead on private land. The land was formally vested in a board of trustees in 1862, marking the beginning of the organized cemetery management. Their work is partially preserved in the trustees' book, 1862 to 1896, which, alongside of headstone transcriptions, local directories, and genealogical research, documents approximately 300 known burials. Of those, about 86 monuments survive today. By the 1940s, an unexpected issue emerged. All members of the original board of trustees had passed away, and no successors had been appointed. Developers used this as an opportunity to plot a takeover deal. They have proposed a redevelopment of the site. They offered to purchase the land, relocate the graves, and construct a commercial block on the site. Needless to say, local citizens were not excited by this prospect. They intervened and they cited the original deed, which stipulated that the land was to be used, quote, forever for the use of the public as a burial ground and for no other purpose. This legal clause proved decisive, and the Township Council ultimately rejected the proposed sale to the developer. In 1955, the cemetery was officially closed to new interments. However, there are two notable exceptions, which were later granted special provincial permission. Now, this is a headstone that I want to look into. Stewart East and Mary Richardson. Stewart is described as a modern pioneer, and his dates are 1908 to 1995. And Mary is with Stewart through time and eternity, and her dates are 1914 to 2001. And there is a 48th Highlander crest on the headstone. So I am interested in why Stewart East is identified as a modern pioneer. They were buried in the Islington Burying Grounds in recognition of their extensive preservation efforts in the restoration of the site. Those efforts included a large restoration project that took place between 1978 and 1988. There has been some restoration done in this cemetery where the headstones were gathered up and placed along the perimeter of this wall. There's two walls of the cemetery of the headstones that have been gathered up. These headstones are primarily made of marble, and you can see there's been a lot of damage caused by acid rain, Canadian winters, and just the general weathering of the stones. Some of them are completely illegible, but they've been preserved. Thomas Montgomery died 8th of November, 1877, age 87 years. Thomas Montgomery emigrated from Ireland and in 1832 established Montgomery's Inn at the corner of Dundas Street and Islington Avenue. The inn served as a rest stop for travelers, a community hub, and a commercial anchor in the growing village. Over time, Montgomery became not only a successful innkeeper and landowner, but also a respected civic figure and benefactor. His life spanned the era when Islington was transforming from rough pioneer settlement into a more established and structured village. Partial inscription. We loved this tender little one, but let our Father's will be done. She shines in endless day. This stone, marking the grave of an infant, is one of many that reflect the fragile realities of early life in the 19th century. Over 40 children under the age of 5 are buried in the Islington Burial Ground, a sobering testament to high child mortality rates in pioneer communities, where illness, poor sanitation, and limited medical care were constant threats. Abel Death died in 1883 at the age of 63, and his wife Lucy in 1884 at the age of 71. They're both interred here. The Death family were farmers and landowners who gradually sold off parcels of their land, contributing to the transformation of farmland into residential subdivisions, a shift that echoed across much of Etobicoke during the early 20th century. The headstones in the cemetery also reflect the web of everyday life. John Dunn was a general store proprietor and sometime postmaster, connecting the community through goods and news. Meade Creech was a local builder. He would have contributed to the village's early architecture and infrastructure. Olive Newlove operated Islington's telephone exchange out of her home. It's a vital communication hub in the early 20th century. The final headstone that I'm going to recognize today is that of Reverend Dr. Stewart East and Mary East. Now, they were buried here by special provincial permission granted decades after the cemetery's official closure in 1955. Reverend East served as a war chaplain, a local minister, a civic advocate, and was instrumental in protecting and restoring the Islington Burying Ground. His dedication ensured that the stories of the early settlers would not be lost to time or redevelopment. His and Mary's resting places symbolically link the cemetery's 19th century origins to modern efforts in heritage conservation. Today, the Islington Burying Ground is maintained by the City of Toronto's Parks and Recreation Division. It's a recognized heritage site and forms part of the city's cultural network. The Islington Burying Ground is no longer classified as a registered cemetery under the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act of 2002. Full circle. Montgomery's Inn, once the beating heart of a rural crossroads, now stands as a museum, frozen in time. Where travelers once gathered, goods were traded and news was shared. Visitors today walk through preserved rooms that echo with the rhythms of 19th century life. After the Second World War, this area changed rapidly. The post-war boom brought a steady absorption of the village into the city. Islington, once a tight-knit rural community, became part of Toronto's urban fabric. But some pieces of the past remain, if you know where to look. The Islington Burial Ground, modest and often overlooked, it's a quiet space that still holds the memory of those who shaped this place. These stones are not just markers of lives lost, they're traces of lives lived. They speak to the community's beginnings. So the next time you pass that small fenced plot, take a moment. Step inside. History isn't only behind us, it's all around. The past is here, still present, still waiting to be remembered. Until we meet again, tread gently. History is closer than you think.